Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalam ala rasulillah. Okay, so the next topic for today is having forced sex with a she-slave. It's actually, first of all, now there is no any slavery, but so this argument is only used as just argument, just for the sake of argument, or otherwise there is nothing called slaves. So the people who are just promoting for these things, they're not trying to help the she-slaves who have been forced to have sex with their masters right now, but it is just to maybe criticize religion. So there is no any practical side of this argument. But anyway, no, because last week or 2 weeks ago, when we have spoke about this, like we need to make some. So basically, I want to. Because in my mind was one thing, we Hanafis, we do actually say in terms of master and she-slave, we say that master has a right of dropping a semen out of the womb, means avoiding the pregnancy, okay, with the she-slave, but he doesn't have a right to do it with the wife. For example, let's suppose that I have wife as well as she-slave. So if I want to avoid the pregnancy, for example using condom, etc., so then I have to ask my wife. Can we use a condom? Just to avoid the pregnancy. But if it would be with my she-slave, so then Islamically, I say according to Hanafi madhab, I do not have to ask if I can have some protection from the pregnancy or not. So that was something that in my mind. But then, because you mentioned that people criticize Islam, saying that Islamically it's permissible to have forced sex with the she-slave. So then maybe I thought maybe somewhere in our Hanafi books, so maybe we may have somewhere it says that you can force your wife to have sex, etc. So then basically I went to check, but unfortunately I wasn't successful to find it. So I don't know if we can get the quotation from them. Where do they get it from?
Sheikh, good point. It's you could say deduction, okay, because it says, so usually what argument is used is they either use hadith,
yeah,
where it's shown that people had sex with she-slaves, and specifically they like to give the example after certain battles,
yeah,
they say we took the booty,
yeah,
and then we made intercourse with them. So they say, look,
yeah,
how can a woman agree to have sex with you after a battle? Definitely you raped her.
Yeah,
it's a deduction, it's not based on it.
Okay.
And same on Quran, they say it says you are allowed what your right hand possesses. So you're given that right, so you will take it.
Okay, so
it's
deduction. It's like analogy actually.
Not even analogy, it's wishful thinking, but they have some, they're saying, look, it doesn't, it's telling you, so it's rape. But is the word rape there? No.
Okay, so it is good example. Anyway, for example, let's take the example of Rasulullah Islam and Sayyidah Sophia. If you remember, we did mention it as like slaves of Rasulullah Islam. If you remember, Sayyidah Sophia was mentioned there. So what was the case? If you remember, some certain group of people, they were preparing an attack to Medina. And as soon as they started doing so, Rasulullah went for them and there was battle. So they lost. Okay, and after that there was booty, okay, and the daughter of the leader of the tribe, she was the share of some of the Sahaba. The second Sahabi came to Rasulullah saying, Ya Rasulullah, go and catch up because the daughter of the leader is there, and if you will take her, if you will marry her, it would help in terms of like Islam a lot, because for example, let's suppose that you are president of some country, and then I will invade into your country, and your daughter will be taken to one of the average, for example, Muslims, okay, and then basically, but if it would be with me, and I'm also president, so it would decrease the problem, okay, so it is, I'm honoring, and I'm not keeping her she-slave no more, but I'm freeing her and marrying her. So it would, Sayyidah Sophia was booty actually, and she was Jewish, okay, from the Jewish tribe, the daughter of the leader of the Jewish tribe. So then what happened? After that, on the way back, actually, Rasulullah freed her and then married her, okay, and then after that, some certain incidents happened, and then Rasulullah ﷺ gave her a choice, saying, okay, Sophia, you know me and you know your parents and etc. and you know my religion and you know the religion of your tribe. Now you are free to choose whatever you want. If you want, you can just accept your previous religion and then go back just for free. There is no any tax, there is no anything. Or if you want, you can stay, city is your city, house is your house, and I'm your husband. So then Sayyidah Sophia made a statement saying, okay, so after me knowing you, Ya Rasulullah, and after me finding the truth, I'm not going nowhere. Okay, so it was another example of another opposite, because the Orientalists are giving negative statement, isn't it? So is it possible that she will be booty and then you will have sex with her, so she will not be happy, so it is force. So it is just analogy on top of analogy. So we say it's not necessary. For example, with the Prophet it happened other way around. Before the intercourse, Rasulullah said, you are free if you want to. She said, after me knowing you and after me finding the truth, I'm going nowhere but here. So it's not necessary that she will be forced or she will be unhappy. Okay, so this analogy is theoretically it could be right, but practically not each single time will be right. Okay, but anyway, in Hanafi text I couldn't find the, but it is still there. For example, in Hanafi text we say that a husband doesn't have a right to drop a semen out of the womb without the permission of the lady, because she has a right of having baby also. But with the she-slave, master will decide if he wants her to be pregnant or not pregnant. So maybe that's what they can catch actually. That is in our Hanafi books, okay? And it is actually ijtihad of Imam Abu Hanifa, and actually I do believe that it is truth. Okay. Okay, so maybe we can just give some certain opinions, because maybe in Arabian countries to be the for example daughter or son of the she-slave, for them it would be some certain thing, you know. Even if you remember, some of the Sahaba, Abu Dharr al-Ghifari, insulted some of the people because his mother was she-slave. Do you remember the story? And then when they came to Rasulullah, Rasulullah was very angry, saying, "Oh Abu Dharr, yet you have some bit of Jahiliyyah time in you. How you could insult him by his mother?" Okay, so people are not angel. Okay, so it is still there. So that's why we say master has a right of avoiding the pregnancy. Maybe just to protect the honor of his son, etc. But anyway, fatwa is there. It is our fatwa, it is Hanafi. But in terms of forcing her to have a sex, it is not our fatwa. But we can just go through the Quranic and the Hadithi texts about something which is not specific about forced sex with the she-slave, but about general things, and this is included into that general things. Okay. So anyway, the first is in Surah An-Nisa, ayah number 36. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. Worship God and do not attribute partners to God. So do not say that there are 2 gods, 3 gods, 4 gods. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. And be very pleasing towards your walidain, parents. Ihsan means be well behaved and be the good behaved and act with your parents on the well behaved manner. وَبِذِي الْقُرْبَى, as well as be well behaved to ذِي الْقُرْبَى, your relatives. وَالْيَتَامَى, and orphans. وَالْمَسَاكِينَ, and poor people. وَالْجَارِ ذِي الْقُرْبَى, as well as the neighbor, okay, who is related to you. وَالْجَارِ الْجُنُوب, and also the neighbor who is living next to you, even though if he's not your relative. وَالصَّاحِبِ بِالْجَنْبِ, and your friends who are living around. وَابْنِ السَّبِيلِ, and the strangers, okay, travelers, so be well behaved towards them. وَمَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ, as well as be well behaved towards those who are under your position. It will include slaves and she-slaves. Okay, so then Allah says, "Inna Allah la yuhibbu man kana mukhtalan fakhura." Because indeed Allah doesn't like those who are proud, pride, as well as the people who are just claiming to be great, you know. So she slaves and slaves are there. So Allah is ordering us to be well behaved. Okay, so I say the scenario about which we are talking, it is there actually, generally. Am I right? Yeah. And also the next ayah is Surah An-Nur, ayah number 33. If you know, in Jahiliyyah time, the people, they would buy she-slaves in order to make money. So he would make a room for the she-slaves, like prostitutes, public houses, you know. So people would go, they would have it, and they would pay. Okay, so then Allah, in the Surah An-Nur, ayah number 33, Allah said, وَلَا تُكْرِهُ فَتَيَاتِكُمْ عَلَى الْبِغَاءِ إِنْ أَرَدْنَا تَحَصُّنًا لِتَبْتَغُوا عَرْضَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. Allah said, stop that. He said, do not force your she-slaves to have sex with the people, prostitution, just in order to gain some dunyawi wealth. Okay, do not do that. Okay, so more or less it is about our issue, isn't it? For sex, but not with the master, but it is still for sex, you know. La tukrihu, do not force them, fatayatikum, your she-slaves, ala al-bigha, for the prostitution. Do not force them. Okay, so that is actually Quranic ayat. And then, in terms of the ahadith, we did speak about it, if you remember, about the slaves, but anyway, I want to repeat some of them ahadith. So it is authentic hadith in Sunan ibn Majah, عن Salama, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يقول في مرضه الذي توفي فيه الصلاة وما ملكت أيمانكم فما زال يقولها حتى يفيض بها لسانه. Sayyidina Salama says that when Rasulullah became ill, so the illness of the death, so Rasulullah kept on repeating, saying, as-salat, namaz, prayer, take care of prayer, وَمَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ, and take care of your possession, means slaves and she-slaves. So then Rasulullah would carry on repeating it till he would mention it for many, many times. Okay, so it is there. It is there. So, and then next hadith, again, inshallah, authentic, narrated by Abu Dawud, عن علي رضي الله عنه, كان آخر كلام رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الصلاة اتقوا الله فيما ملكت أيمانكم. So Ali radiallahu anhu says, the last ever thing that I have heard from the Prophet just before the death, Rasulullah saying, as-salat, be careful about namaz, be careful about prayer. اتقوا الله, fear God, فيما ملكت أيمانكم, fear God in acting with your slaves and she-slaves. Okay, so hadith is there. Again, the next hadith is عن معرور ابن سويد قال رأيت أبا ذر الغفاري رضي الله عنه وعليه حلة وعلى غلامه حلة فسألناه عن ذلك فقال إني ساببت رجلا فشكاني إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال لي النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أعيرته بأمه ثم قال إن إخوانكم خولكم جعل الله تحت أيديكم فمن كان أخوه تحت يده فليطعمه مما يأكل وليلبسه مما يلبس ولا تكلفوهم ما يغلبهم فإن كلفتموهم ما يغلبهم فأعينوهم. Hadith is in Bukhari and Muslim. So once people saw Abu Dharr al-Ghifari wearing beautiful clothes as well as his slaves wearing very beautiful clothes, and they were working. So then they said, how come that you both are wearing like similar clothes? Okay, so then Abu Dharr said, once I insulted some person, same story, because his mother was she-slave, saying that you are son of a she-slave or etc. So then Rasulullah actually was angry. He said, أَعَيَّرْتَهُ بِأُمِّهِ, did you insult him by his mother? In different narration, Rasulullah saying, you have some portion of jahilism. How you can insult him by his mother? Okay, so then Rasulullah said, إِنَّ إِخْوَانُكُمْ خَوَلُكُمْ, your brothers are in your labor. Okay, جَعَلَ اللَّهُ تَحْتَ أَيْدِيكُمْ, Allah made them to serve you. Okay, فَمَنْ كَانَ أَخُوهُ تَحْتَ يَدِهِ, so anyone has his brother, means slave, his brother under his position, فَلْيُطْعِمْهُ مِمَّا يَأْكُلُ, so let him to feed him what he eats by himself. Okay, well, يلبسهما مما يلبس, as well as let him to make him to wear what he by himself wears. Okay, ولا تكلفوهم ما يغلبهم, as well as do not make them to do something which is difficult for them. فإن كلفتموهم, but if you will make them to do something very difficult, فأعينوهم, so you master go and help them also. Okay, so as you can see, Rasulullah is so it is just small bits and bytes, because forced sex is much worse than that. Am I right? Yes. So it's the the next is عن يزيد بن جارية, as well as it's a narration of Imam Ahmad, inshallah authentic. أرقاءكم أرقاءكم أرقاءكم. Rasulullah is repeated 3 times. Your slaves, take care of your slaves, take care of your slaves. Okay. أطعموهم مما تأكلون, feed them whatever you eat. وكسوهم مما تلبسون, make them to wear whatever you wear by yourself. فإن جاءوا بذنب لا تريدون أن تغفروه فبيعوا عباد الله ولا تعذبوهم. And if they will commit some sin that you dislike, so then do not oppress them, but sell them off. Okay, so it is something that you can لا تريدون أن تغفروه. So if they commit some sin that you don't want to forgive them, so then do not oppress them, do not punish them, but sell them off. Yeah, and the next hadith is عن جندب ibn Abdullah, again Imam Ahmad. من لائمكم من خدمكم فأطعموهم مما تأكلون واكسوهم مما تلبسون ومن لا يلائمكم فبيعوا ولا تعذبوا خلق الله. Rasulullah is saying, any of your slaves that you find suitable for you, so then feed them what you eat, and then make them to wear whatever you wear by yourself. But the slaves of yours that are not suitable for you, so then sell them off. وَلَا تُعَذِّبُوا خَلْقَ اللَّهِ, but do not oppress and do not punish the creature of God. Okay, so the next hadith is عن Abdullah ibn Amr, hadith is in Bayhaqi. Rasulullah says, لا تحملوهم ما لا يطيقون, do not make them to do something that they are unable to do. وأطعموهم مما تأكلون, and feed them what you eat. وكسوهم مما تلبسون, and make them to wear what you wear. وما كرهتم فبيعوا, anything that you dislike, sell them. وما رضيتم فأمسكوا, and anything that you like about your slaves, keep them. ولا تعذبوا خلق, and do not punish the slaves of God. ثم قال, and after that Rasulullah said, من مثل به أو حرق بالنار فهو حر وهو مولى الله ورسوله فأعتقه رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. So then anyone who will punish his slave, okay, by making musla, by chopping off, for example, nose and finger, because in the time of Jahiliyyah they used to punish their slaves by chopping off their nose, their ears, just to give them more pain. Or harraqa bin nar, or anyone who will burn his slave. So in the Jahiliyyah again they used to do. So then Rasulullah says, so that slave is free by God and Rasulullah. Means that slave will straight away get automatically freed if his master will punish, and then Baytul Mal will be responsible to refund the master. Okay. So well, I don't believe that any other constitution had this type of you can say statement. Look, and further down, which is even less sensitive, hadith is in Sahih Muslim by Abu Huraira, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال, Rasulullah is saying, لا يقولن أحدكم عبدي وأمتي كلكم عبيد الله وكل نسائكم إماء الله. No any of you should say, this is my slave, this is my she-slave, because all of you are slaves of God, and all of your women are she-slaves of Allah. Then he says, وَلَكِنْ لِيَقُلْ غُلَامِي وَجَارِيَتِي وَفَتَايَ وَفَتَاتِي. But do not say my slave, but say my man. غُلَامِي, my kid. Okay, do not say my slave, but my kid or my man. Or jariyati, my girl or my lady. Do not say my she-slave. Okay, so if Rasulullah is concerned about not hurting them, but just by saying my slave, so do you think that he will say, yeah, go and have forced sex with them, which is much more worse, isn't it? Yeah, so it's a bit strange. And the next hadith is by Abu Nu'aym and Ahmad and Ibn Abi Shayba from Ibn Umar قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من ضرب عبده أو لطمه فكفارته عتقه. Anyone who beats his slave or لطمه slaps on his face, so فكفارته عتقه. So purification of that sin is to free him. Okay, so it is that. So normally, because raping, it will be by beating, isn't it? No, I think it's more or less is about exactly what we're talking about. So if you will slap your slave, she's slave, or if you will beat her, so then you're sinful, and purification of that sin, you have to free her. Okay, so more or less it is about what we're talking about. Yeah, and again, hadith is very famous. In Sahih al-Bukhari, Rasulullah, if you remember, mentioning 3 people who will be given the reward twice. Okay, so for example, now we did pray Dhuhr Salat. So if there would be one of them 3 category with us, so he would be, just by praying Dhuhr once, he would be rewarded twice. Okay, so one of them is أيما رجل كانت عنده وليدة فعلمها فأحسن تعليمها وأدبها فأحسن تأديبها ثم أعتقها وتزوجها فله أجران. Anyone who has a she-slave, okay, and if he will teach her perfectly, فأحسن تعليمها, and he will teach her perfectly, وأدبها, and he will discipline her, فأحسن تأديبها, and he will discipline her perfectly, ثم أعتقها, and after that if he will free her, وتزوجها, and after that if he will marry her, he will be rewarded twice. Okay, so hadith is actually going to that direction. Again, the next hadith is in Bayhaqi from Anas ibn Malik. اتقوا الله في الصلاة اتقوا الله في الصلاة اتقوا الله في الصلاة. Fear God in salat 3 times. اتقوا الله فيما ملكت أيمانكم اتقوا الله فيما ملكت أيمانكم اتقوا الله في الضعيفين. And then Rasulullah said twice, fear God, or even 3 times, fear God about your slaves and she-slaves. Okay, and then Rasulullah said, fear God about 2 weak people. Okay, and then they asked, what are these 2 people, weak people? Rasulullah said, al-mar'atul armala, it is widowed lady, was-sabiyul yatim, and then the orphan kid. So fear God on them 2 category of people. So fear God in your slaves and she-slaves, it is repeated 3 times. Okay, so it is there also. Next hadith, Samurah ibn Jundub, in the narration of Imam Ahmad, Man qatala abdahu qatalnahu, man jada'ahu jada'nahu. In the Jahiliyyah time, as I said, they used to kill and they used to separate the limbs of their slaves as a punishment, you know. So Rasulullah said, anyone who will kill his slave, who will take revenge by killing him, and anyone who will chop off the nose of his slave, who will chop off his nose as a revenge. Okay, and in the next hadith, in the Abu Dawud al-Tayalisi, Rasulullah says, وَمَنْ خَصَّاهُ خَصَّيْنَاهُ. So they used to buy a slave, okay, who would serve the wife of the master, but just to protect from zina, they would chop off the private place of the slave. So Rasulullah says, anyone who will chop off the private place of his slave, who will chop off his private place and in revenge. Okay, so it is that. And then hadith is in Tabarani. لا يحل لرجل مسلم أن يجدع عبده ولا يخصيه أو يخصيه ومن نعلمه فعل من ذلك شيئا نفعل به مثله. So Rasulullah says, it's not permissible for the Muslim to chop off the nose of his slave or chop off the private place of his slave, but if we will know anyone doing that to his slave, we will do exactly the same thing to him also. So these are maybe the things maybe about the Islamic texts about slaves. Yeah.
Sheikh, didn't you say in your talk on forced marriage that if someone even forced, like you could say forced his wife to have sex by, like, you know, forcing her,
yeah,
even this is prohibited, although there's no punishment,
yeah,
but it's prohibited.
Yeah.
Did you, is it it's like same kind of thing for slaves, is it, or?
Oh, of course.
Because in Hanafi you said, maybe I misunderstood, but even with your wife, there's no such thing like marital rape.
Yeah.
But like, if I force my wife to have sex, she doesn't want to, I push her down and I have sex with her, then this is prohibited. But of course there's no witnesses, so...
No. In terms of forced sexual intercourse with your wife, actually, there are two different things actually. One thing is, lady, if she does not have a valid excuse, she's sinful of not letting me. Okay, because if I do not do it with my wife, so then, do I go to commit zina? Do you understand? So then why did I marry her? If it's not because of protecting, myself from zina, so then, and she's not letting me. So then what's the meaning of marrying, And what's the meaning of me maintaining lady who is her existence and non-existence is same? Doesn't make sense, So she's sinful for that. But then a man will be sinful because of not implementing what Rasulullah says. So Rasulullah said, if you want to have sexual intercourse with your wife, do not be like animal, but prepare her. And when you finish, do not get up, but let her to finish also. Yeah. So that's the main concern.
But is that only for wife? Or
same thing for the she. Not only the difference between wife and she slave, pregnancy.
Right.
So your wife has a right on you about pregnancy, but your she slave, no.
So would Hanafi say, even before approaching your she slave, it has to be like prepare her and be nicely dressed?
Of course, yeah. You have to prepare her, yeah.
So it's very different from what Orientalists do.
You have to prepare her as well as you have to just protect her afterward.
Yeah.
Just when you finish, you have to let her to finish also. Yes. So difference is only like pregnancy. So she doesn't have a right on pregnancy.
So one other question. I did Muhammad Assad's commentary on Quran is very popular in the West, and he did give one opinion of Ibn Abbas. There is no such thing as intercourse with she-slave. Have you ever heard of this?
No, I don't know about this one. No, even there is a very famous statement from Ibn Abbas, okay, in our Hanafi text, in which he says, which is very obvious, you can say, a mention of sexual intercourse. So Ibn Abbas was performing Umrah, and then he was in his camel. Okay, so then his camel was walking very slowly and very gently, smoothly. So then he took a superstition saying that if my camel will be walking gently, so then I will not be tired. So then, if I will not be tired, so when I will complete my Umrah, when I will get back to my place, so then I will have sexual intercourse with my she-slave. So that's exactly opposite of what you are quoting, but I need to double check. So Ibn Abbas, in this narration, in Hanafi texts, so he by himself said that it is permissible. So I need to double check about that one. Yeah. But one thing is agreed upon again, if your she-slave has a husband, you do not have a right of touching her even. Yeah, so it could be two things. So for example, let's suppose that a booty happened, because the main source, there is only one source of slavery, isn't it? So booty is taken, okay, and then it is couples, husband and wife is taken as a booty. Okay, so we say that marriage is still valid. Okay, so then if husband will be in your share, but wife will be in my share, I do not have a right to touch her, because she's married. That's one scenario. And the second scenario, I can marry off my she-slave to anyone, So now she becomes as a stranger to me. I do not have a right to touch her. Yeah. But besides that, if she's not married, or if I have two sisters as my she-slave, if I will have a sexual intercourse with one, second is haram for me to touch. So she is the same as a wife, if you understand.
So Sheikh, are you saying clearly that if there is, because again, people like to make this scenario of jihad, which isn't even happening, it's just, again, fantasy. So if Muslims did take captives, and there's two married people, so where is the accusation they say that we would just dissolve that marriage is broken? So like if I take a she-slave, let's say I took, not that we're going to do this, there's some strange people who listen to this. So as a theoretical question, in classical period, if someone took a she-slave, she has a family, so that marriage is valid, you don't have sex.
No, if both are taken, so then we do not touch them. But if one is taken, so then marriage will be invalidated straight away.
Right.
One is in his land, and wife is taken as a booty. No marriage.
Okay.
If you understand. Now, for example, if you go back to the battles, so we do practice our religion, but others do not practice our religion, am I right? So what would happen? They would take our wives, even if it would be husband and wife, they would do both, you know, some of them, you know. They don't care, but with us it's different. If we take them both, marriage is still there, we don't touch, you know. But if only one is taken, so then basically we say there is no marriage. Yeah. So it is that.